Welcome to How AI Happens, a podcast where experts explain their work at the cutting edge of artificial intelligence. You'll hear from AI researchers, data scientists, and machine learning engineers as they get technical about the most exciting developments in their field and the challenges they're facing along the way. I'm your host, Rob Stevenson, and we're about to learn how AI happens. Here with me today on How AI Happens is the Director of Video Analytics over at Genetec, as well as the host and star of the Video Analytics 101 YouTube channel, Florian Matusek. Florian, welcome to the podcast. How the heck are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you because I don't think there's really enough technical content out there, specifically on video analytics and really getting deep in the weeds. There's a lot of really flashy things about what you can do with some machine learning, with some algorithms on top of like highly produced video, but I really want to get into some of the nitty gritty here, and you are just the man for that. I want to learn about the company Genetec that you're at and your role. First though, I've loved in researching this for this episode, I've loved your YouTube channel, Video Analytics 101. I love how technical it is. So would you mind sharing a little bit about the genesis of that channel and what it is you cover over there?
Yeah, sure. So it all started at the beginning of COVID, where more and more people went online and were consuming more digital content. And when we looked at what's out there, what's in YouTube, we found out that everything is promotional in our space, in the security space. All the manufacturers have flashy webinars and product sheets and so on, but there's no educational content that really focuses on the security industry. There's a lot about AI and machine learning in general, but really nothing educating people on video analytics in security, how stuff works, how does deep learning work, how does machine learning work in security in our video analytics. So we found there's nothing there. So that's why I started the channel, and it's been now roughly 1.5 years and has a great following and is just growing and growing. So it's really exciting.
Who would you say is the channel for? Who is like your ideal viewer who would get the most out of that kind of content?
So the ideal viewer is technically interested, but not necessarily a developer or somebody who is actually sitting down and coding. Although it's interesting for them as well, but we try to make the content as easily consumable as possible, but still get into the nitty-gritty of the technical details. So somebody who is technically interested in how it works. In our industry, this might be what we call system integrators or end users, customers who really are interested how stuff works under the hood, but not necessarily are developers, but really want to know how it works. And this is really what it's for.
Sounds familiar. Thank you for sharing that with me. That was kind of a selfish question as a fellow content creator, just to learn a little bit about your positioning and all that. But the channel is fantastic. I definitely recommend it, and we'll make sure to put the link to the show notes. And I'm hoping that if this goes well enough, this video will wind up on your channel as well. So
absolutely,
fingers crossed that I'm up to snuff to make the channel. But anyway, I want to hear more about your company, Genetec. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what the company does, and then we can get into your background and role as well?
Yeah, sure. So Genetec is a software provider for the physical security industry. And when we talk about physical security, we mean video management. You see all the video surveillance cameras out there. We mean access control. We mean license plate recognition. And the company is now 25 years old, and it was really founded just when there was the first change from analog cameras, surveillance cameras, typically CCTV cameras, to IP cameras, like when it became networked. And Genetec was one of the first software providers there, and it grew and grew and grew. And today we can really proudly say that we are the largest software provider in video management globally. But what's even more important for us is that we try to disrupt the market even after 25 years and drive innovation, bring innovation to the market. And in the end, our reason for existing is really to make the lives of the operator that is sitting in front of the video screens easier, to make it easier for them to provide the security, to manage security, and to do the thing in an ethical, moral, and privacy protecting way. So this is what we are really all about.
I'm always delighted when companies like Genetec, who are doing really exciting stuff in this space, have been around for a while. In your case, 25 years. What was it like at the beginning? What were the sort of the use cases for Genetec? Who were you then, and what are you doing now?
So in the beginning, nowadays we would call it simple. But the challenge back then was really to get an IP signal, record it, and then view it on the video wall. And that sounds simple, but it's not so simple to do this in a secure way. to store the video so it cannot be manipulated, so to make sure that it's transferred properly from the camera to a server, to retrieve it in a fast fashion, and to replay multiple videos at the same time. And of course, nowadays we grew way beyond that. Nowadays, it's about automation, it's about operational efficiency, it's about integrating video and access control and license plate recognition, many other sensors, IoT sensors, all into one platform and providing the user a single pane of glass. So we went from a very simple beginning of just recording and viewing video to a very sophisticated platform that really manages all kinds of security data that's out there.
25 years ago, when a camera was the size of a rocket launcher and it was a non-trivial thing to store video data, right? Providing a wall of video feed, like a wall of content for some kind of security individual, which sounds like the use case, that was a non-trivial thing, like I said. So now we've come a long way. What are some of the video analytics you're layering on top of it? What are some of the, like, in addition to presenting the material in like a very clean way, what are some of the insights you are looking to provide folks?
So it's interesting. My personal background is video analytics, and we'll get into this a little bit later. There have been several waves of video analytics in the last, I would say, 15 years, where there's always a lot of excitement, and then there is the trough of this disillusionment, like Gartner. And the same thing happens in video analytics. So we have to be very careful at what is out there, what is being promised, and what is actually usable and can provide an actual benefit to the user. One of these things that we are doing is we are focusing on protecting people's privacy with video analytics by analyzing the video and then pixelating people in the video automatically. But everything else is clear. And if something happens, then you unlock this video based on permissions. This is a very unusual video analytics application, but it's so useful and it works in practice on every single camera that you put out there. And for the first time, you have a compromise or really a synergy between security and privacy, and it's not a zero-sum game anymore. So this is a very unique application that actually works and is being deployed in the field. Going back to maybe more classical video analytics applications, what is also very useful is anything that goes around occupancy of buildings, of buses, of train stations. So knowing how many people are in a space is becoming increasingly important and interesting. Some manufacturers call this spatial analytics, to know where people are moving. You can think about a train platform, for example, where if you know that everybody is gathering at one part of the platform, you can automatically trigger an announcement and say, please go to the back of the platform, to really have an operational benefit to the whole thing. And this is really what it's all about in video analytics. It's not about having the next flashy thing and the next model that can even detect more accurately. It's really about use cases and applications that provide real world benefits. And of course, it needs to work. But if it's now 98 or 99% accurate, it's less important than actually providing an actual use to the user.
That is an interesting balance to strike, because the example of the train station, I can see how that would immediately impact me as you said, a user of the product, which is the train station that is using this technology enabled through Genetec, right?
Yeah.
The other side of that, though, is what are the analytics you just give to the product developer, the people who are in charge of making the train station more efficient. They might see, like, you would give them insights to increase their marketing or to improve their security or what have you. What is the line between something that can be fashioned in real time to help me versus something that's provided on the back end to the customer to make sort of slight adjustments and tweaks over time?
Well, in the end, it's up to the customer, because the customer is the one spending the money on the system. But there is an additional aspect to it, and that's what I mentioned before around protecting privacy. That goes beyond this, because yes, we will always build products that benefit our users, which is the security operator, or they're the ones purchasing it. But at the same time, we see it as our responsibility to also do everything possible to protect the privacy of the citizens that our customers are using to record. And this goes beyond it. So there might be some aspects where you cannot attach a commercial value to it, but we still want to do it. We still want to make sure we use encryption to make sure it's cannot be hacked. We want to make sure we're protecting people's privacy. We want to make sure that there are different permission levels to access the data. And this is more that goes beyond the interest of the actual user. It goes really to the interest of us as a society and the classical citizen. And coming back to your example, it usually the benefits that a user sees or a customer sees really overlap with many benefits that the actual citizen sees. Like the train station it's a great example. But of course, there's some things that go beyond. One example is one of the video analytics you can apply is something that informs you if the cameras are being dirty or covered or turned away. You as a citizen don't have a direct impact to this, but it has a huge impact on operations because the customer can make sure that cameras are actually recording. Situations do not happen where something happened, you want to look at the recording and you find out that exactly this camera that was turned away, it was covered. So this is something that's really about maintenance and operations that benefits our customers, where citizens might not see the benefit right away, but in the end, of course, the benefit as well.
Got it. So because Genetec has different kinds of customers, I'm sure you see lots of use cases, and just generally as installed in the industry you probably keep tabs on what's happening in the space. What are some new use cases or techniques, trends in video analytics that you find particularly exciting?
Interestingly enough, the things I find exciting might not be the exciting things, because in video analytics or machine learning in general, you can always come up with the next cool thing. You can come up with a super resolution or generative networks or text to image or these kind of things. And these are all great, but they don't help you if you cannot deploy them at scale, if they don't run at scale, if they don't run all the time. It doesn't help you if it works in 50% of the time. They have to run 100% of the time. So what gets me excited are solutions that are really targeted for a specific purpose and made perfect for this purpose. Occupancy is a great example where you can really hone in on this and make it work for the customer, that it works 100%. But maybe it's a solution that works only for train stations and it doesn't work for stadiums, but it works perfectly for train stations. This is what really excites me and really gets the benefit of video analytics into the hands of the users. Now, if you want to hear a little bit more about technology, of course, there are exciting things happening as well. I would say one of the big things that are happening right now in video analytics and security in general is person re-identification. Because we all know facial recognition. It's super controversial depending on which country you go, but definitely in the US, definitely in Europe. And it's typically being used to identify the same person across cameras. And this is not being deployed so much anymore as it used to be because of all the legal hurdles. But a big trend right now is re-identification of people without using the face. So you want to use the clothes that they're wearing, maybe the way they walk. And maybe that's a re-identification that only works right now because as soon as you change clothes, you are not being re-identified anymore, thus protecting your privacy. But you can do all these great use cases by knowing that the same person appears in different cameras. You can think about a search. If you find a person of interest, you can say, where has this person been before? And it gives you all the results where this person has been. You can tie this to your access control systems and say, okay, this person badged in here with the access control. Now this person is over there. You can use this to learn the layouts of cameras. So there are a bunch of cool applications using Re-ID that were not possible before and where you do not have to use facial recognition, which extremely intrudes into people's privacy. So this is pretty cool. If we go beyond this, but this is still a few years out, what's up and coming is gait analysis. So to analyze how people walk, because this is really also a biometric indicator that would be used like facial recognition without using the face as well, but just the way people walk.
How reliable is gait analysis at this moment?
Right now, it's not very reliable, honestly. You need a very high resolution to do it. You can think about typical surveillance cameras. A typical resolution is 1080p. So you don't have 4K, you don't have anything beyond. And you have to imagine that a typical view of a camera just looks at the street. People are super far away, they're small. So you might have a resolution of a person of maybe 30 pixels height, which is really not a lot. And it's definitely not a lot for gait recognition. So I would say it's really in its infancy and it's not accurate enough today to be usable.
Yeah, 30 pixels is nothing. That's like Super Mario, basically.
Yeah.
Who, I will point out, had a very recognizable gait. In any case, that is really interesting as just like an anonymized way to a non-facial way to identify someone. Doesn't that run into the same sort of anonymization problem, though? Even if you obfuscate someone's face, but they're still identifiable via their gait, don't you run into some of the same challenges with privacy and security?
Yes, absolutely. And this is also the differentiation between gait analysis and the re-identification I mentioned before. Re-identification really works only by the way people dress. So as soon as they change clothes, you don't have this issue. While gait analysis is really a biometric identification, which absolutely will be treated the same way as facial recognition. So yes, absolutely agree.
And the idea is that in anonymization, you are still gleaning the insight because you know this is the same group of data points, this is the same person, as opposed to, oh, we're doing this so we can identify you, Rob, walking through the stadium. We're identifying you as a recurring sprite, essentially, so that we can glean insight from you as a something that reappears, re-identifies.
Yeah. If we go back to the train station, one interesting example of re-identification would be you see a person entering the train station, and then you see the same person on all the different cameras. And this way you can measure how long does it take for a person to go from A to B, which actually is a very real and very valuable information for railway operators. So they do want to know this. They want to know how long paths take in the railway station. So you could do this by identifying the same person and then measuring how long does it take them to get through the train station. But the next day when they're coming back, you have no way of knowing that it's the same person. So we don't care that it's Rob. We don't care that this person is coming back, but we can still use it to track them through the railway station, which is a more anonymous way than, for example, using cell phone data, using the MAC address that your Wi-Fi might send out, because we have no way of knowing it's the same person as soon as they change clothes.
Yeah, that makes sense that you would want to be able to track usage over a period of time. So say I go to the train station every single day or 5 days a week to go to work. You want to know, what time does he arrive? Does he take the escalator? Does he walk up the escalator or stand still on it? How long does it take him to get from the ticket turnstile to the platform? All these things that you would want lots of data over a long period of time.
Yeah, just one more example that we all know from the airport. If we stand in the security line, tells us 5 minutes. And this is exactly how this is being done. So it knows that this a specific person is standing in line for 5 minutes. So we can estimate the next person will also stand for 5 minutes. And that's a very real example that we all experience and know that has a lot of benefit to us.
Yeah, I experienced that 2 days ago, and I just sort of took it for granted. I was like, that's probably just a guess based on how many people are in the building. But of course, there's no one at the doors to the airport with the little chrome like clicker thing.
Yeah,
figuring that out. Of course, it's all automated and served up to someone. So yeah, it definitely affects my life. And the notion of me as a data sprite over time leads me into this question, the greater question about the challenges with data. I mean, this comes up a lot. This podcast could probably be called How Data Happens, or maybe How Data Doesn't Happen, but We Wish It Happened. And I imagine for you, it's even more uniquely difficult because video analytics is sensitive to get your hands on it. It's also happening, like you said, in varying resolutions at one angle, maybe. So what are some of the challenges associated with getting data to train your models?
our industry is very interesting because, as you mentioned, it's very specific. Surveillance camera footage is very specific. Most of the data sets that are out there are not made for this. Like we all know ImageNet, it's basically random photos. I'm sure when Facebook is training for Facebook photos, they don't use surveillance footage, but they use people's photos. Same for Google Photos or Apple Photos. So the main applications for video and image recognition are not surveillance videos, which also means that all the data sets available, independently of the issues of licensing, which is a separate issue, are not made for surveillance footage. The only surveillance footage that you really get is incidentally Chinese, because apparently they don't care so much about the privacy when they create data sets. But in the end, you want something broader. You cannot only train on Chinese data sets, obviously. So this is definitely a challenge to find the right data sets that fit your use case. Maybe our industry is also interesting because if you want to create, for example, the thing with the railway stations that we mentioned, you don't only want it to work for railway stations in the US. It has to work in the US, it has to work in Europe, it has to work in India, it has to work in Dubai, and it has to work in Tokyo. So you need this variability a lot. Once it's out there, it has to work everywhere. So this is extremely difficult. Obviously, all providers try to do their own thing and create data sets, but it's a challenge for everyone.
In the case of getting loads of data from China, I can see how that would be appealing, but it's not necessarily variable, as you say. Could it be applied across every use case? Just there are all these cultural differences associated with it. I'm imagining, to go back to the train station example, in Japan, they have these employees with white gloves on that they gently sort of push people to get more people onto the train. And that's sort of accepted. It's a cultural thing that they just sort of understand and accept. If you try to do that in New York City, like that person would get absolutely knocked out, right?
Yeah.
There's no way you could do that. But that would come through in the data. And so in the same way with the data from China, there are these cultural differences to how people utilize public spaces that you would have to account for. So it may not be one-to-one applicable to other places. Is there an opportunity here for synthetic data to sort of augment your data strategy?
Well, definitely there's a hope that synthetic data could help. Currently, there's a hype around it. It's sometimes seen as a panacea to the data problem, to also solve the licensing issue. But I would say we are very much in the beginning of synthetic data, especially for our security industry. If you look at synthetic data providers, all what you see everywhere, they're all focused on creating digital twins, digital twin cities, digital twin factories for the automotive space. There's not a lot that really looks at the general surveillance, because the challenge, as I mentioned, there is really the variability. Sorry. So what you would rather need is something super sophisticated that has so many different environments as Grand Theft Auto, for example. But this doesn't exist yet in a way that's really properly done. So all the companies in our space that I've been talking to are really creating their own environments for synthetic data in order to augment their own data sets. And so far, results have been mixed. So definitely it provides a value there, but everybody also agrees you cannot do it with synthetic data alone. It can only be part of the mix. It can only augment it, but you still need real data. And of course, there are different approaches. You can take a synthetic data and then use generative networks to make it look more real, which also helps, but it still doesn't replace real data. So in summary, definitely there is a hope that it will help. Realistically, likely it will still be both. You need synthetic data and real data in order to make real applications work real well.
Yeah, it seems like the powerful synthetic data environments are happening, like you said, at larger companies. So NVIDIA, I know, has one. Unity is kind of making a big bet on it. I sat down with their SVP of AI to discuss that. And even he conceded that it will never just be synthetic data, that it will always have to be based on and compared to real world data to ensure that it has verisimilitude and that it is reliable. Being as it is now, where the synthetic data environments are sort of the purview of large companies, do you expect that will become commoditized, that it will become more accessible to smaller companies and maybe even individual users who can't afford to pay Unity a couple $1 million a year to get access to their synthetic data environment?
Absolutely. It will get commoditized. We're not there yet, not even close, but definitely we're getting there. We saw something similar with general data sets, although with general data sets, the problem that I see is that few people are looking at the actual licensing. Even if you look at ImageNet, what's being licensed and available are the labels, not the underlying image data, which has totally different licensing for each individual image. So what's happening in this industry, especially, well, all the companies, including small companies, because everybody has access to these public data sets, people are using this and accepting that this is a legal gray area. We are trying to avoid this as much as possible. So we are really trying to create our own data sets. But what I see in the larger industry is that this is pretty much being ignored. And I think this is definitely a threat. And I hope that this will also go away with synthetic data sets as soon as synthetic data gets more commoditized, that you don't have this complex issue of licensing anymore, because it's a very clear who created the data. While with existing data sets, you have different people, the person that took the photograph, the person that's on the photograph, the person that labeled the photograph, and then the platform that provides it. So there's so many different players providing this data, so it becomes very fuzzy or opaque. While with synthetic data, it should be clear. And I hope as soon as this commoditized, it will make synthetic data legally available really to everyone, including smaller companies. But we're still a few years away from that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I want to learn a little bit more about some of the customers using Genetec. Obviously, you don't have to name names. I'm sure they might not appreciate that. But what are some ways that you've found folks using the technology that maybe you didn't expect, or gleaning new kinds of insights? I feel like once you put some powerful tech in the hands of users, it gets used in all these interesting ways. What's happening out there?
Well, it's interesting, yeah, because obviously we provide products that for a certain use case. But as you're saying, increasingly we see users trying to use it in a very creative way. One of these ways is combining different events from video analytics in order to get to a certain outcome. So going back again to trains, just because we have been there, One example is one of our customers is using our analytics to detect when people go on the railway tracks, because obviously that's a safety hazard. But interesting enough, that's a challenge because when they applied our analytics, they found out they get alerts every time a train comes in and people enter the train because they're going to the same area, just there's a train standing there. So what they came up with is they used our other analytics to detect that a train is coming in and created a rule like if a train is coming in, then switch off the video analytics to detect people going on the tracks. And if the train goes out, activate it again. And this works very well. And it's a very surprising outcome that we haven't thought about before, but it makes a lot of sense in their specific use case. And the same way we see many others. We had one of the customers who their problem was oil spills. They had I believe it was a pond, and they wanted to know if there is oil or other toxic material spilling. And it had a very unique look, but obviously it didn't look all the time the same. But they applied our analytics in order to automatically detect when there is some a floating film on top of the water, and to trigger an alert. And again, something completely surprising that we had no idea that this is possible or that there's a need. And maybe a third example is with another customer where you have delivery trucks going into a facility. They're being weighed when they go in, so they have to go on a big scale in order to know how much they weigh. But what increasingly happened is that these trucks didn't stop at the right spot. Like they went a little bit above, like too far or not far enough. So not the full truck was on the scale and they got the wrong weight. So they applied analytics in order to check that the truck is completely on the platform and didn't go too far. Again, it was a standard analytic module of ours. It was not meant to be used in this way, but it still worked and they used it in this way. So it's really funny how customers come up with creative ways to solve their specific problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I let you go, there's a specific problem I want to ask you about just to kind of satisfy my own curiosity, which is that recently I went to a Denver Broncos game, and I don't know if you follow American football, but the most interesting thing that happened at that game to me was that inside the stadium, there are these sections where you can buy drinks and you just kind of take it out of the cooler and then you walk out and then you pay as you walk out, and there's no attendant, there's no scanning on like a barcode or anything. You pay and you walk out, basically, right? Can you explain to me what's happening there? Like, where is the computer vision and video analytics playing a part to make sure that I pay for the things I'm taking and exactly the things I'm taking and only the things I'm taking?
Okay, well, I haven't seen the one in Denver, but in general, that's the same thing that Amazon Go in their stores are doing, right? So it's you go in, you take something, there are no cash registers anymore, and if you look at how Amazon is building this up, it's super sophisticated. And you would be surprised how many cameras you need in order to pull this off. Because just putting a standard camera there and detecting what's in the shelf, what a person is doing and taking it out, it's not enough because you have so many occlusions. It's very hard to see. You have to account for situations where a person takes it and puts in the cart and puts it back again. So yes, it's possible, but currently it's only possible with a big effort in terms of camera hardware and server hardware behind it. Obviously, what you're doing is you're training on specific products. You detect that there is a product. You count how many products there are. You detect that there's a person. You analyze the movement of this person, like reaching out to the shelf, taking it out, counting that there are less there. Sometimes what they also have, if you have a cart, they have a separate camera on the cart that again detects that the item is now in the cart and knows what you're actually buying. So yes, there's all this computer vision stuff around it, maybe in combination with other stuff like RFID. But today, while it's possible, it's only possible with a very big technological effort.
Yeah, and in the football stadium example, I'm trying to remember, maybe we had to put it down on like a platform and then pay, and so it's like scanning on the platform. It's not
That's
like
easier.
But as you say, it's just endlessly complicated. It's like, okay, I take it off of the shelf and I put it back on a different shelf, right? Or say there's a camera in my cart, but I have the same item stacked up a couple times and I have other things all around it. Like, can it only see the thing on the top? So I don't know. Do you suspect that use case will prove valuable, that we will remove cash registers and grocery store employees?
I think there's a big value in retail in order to automate this because you want to improve operations. You want to avoid queues. It's frustrating for everyone. It's inefficient. So there are many ways in order to improve this. And yes, we already know self-checkout where you have to scan yourself. So this is a way to improve this. I definitely think we're going in this direction, but I think we are far away from becoming commoditized. And I think stores like Amazon Go, they also just account for a certain kind of loss. I mean, I guess it's the same as when you just return your item to Amazon and they just throw it away. It's just priced into their margin. And I think the same way they do in their stores. So if they just make a mistake, it's fine for them as long as the customer is happy. So I think for them it works, but it will be some time before we will really see this in a Walmart or any large deployment at least.
Makes sense. Florian, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've been really fascinated by the work you're doing and how you've explained all this to me. So as we creep up on optimal podcast length here, I'll just say thank you so much for being with me on the show. I've loved learning from you today.
Well, thank you. That's been super fun.
How AI Happens is brought to you by Sama. Sama provides accurate data for ambitious AI. Specializing in image, video, and sensor data annotation and validation for machine learning algorithms in industries such as transportation, retail, e-commerce, media, medtech, robotics, and agriculture. For more information, head to sama.com.